For all the good UCLA did in the portal this year and NIL with Mick Cronin, there's still potential glaring weaknesses on this roster for this year.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoff season, the tournament season, the Olympic season winds down, sports aren't going to be sporting like we want them to until football season comes around. So FanDuel's hooking up customers all summer long with the booster bonus daily. Just check it out at FanDuel.com. Where we get started today is potential weaknesses or a glaring weakness for this UCLA men's basketball team this upcoming year. The talk, Big Ten, scheduling, all that. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up in the next segment. UCLA has one glaring weakness, according to Mick Cronin. He was talking to John Rothstein. I did mention this in a recent Locked On UCLA podcast. It's the post for him, right? It depends where Mick Cronin's going to go. Are the Bruins going to be small? Are they going to play with Kyle at the third? Or is it all dependent upon the development of Daimara? I talked about the need for an improved Daimara. Mick Cronin, when he was talking with John Rothstein on the pod very recently, was saying, hey, it depends. We need a lot out of Mara this year. He's the guy that stayed over the Berkes, over the Feebles, right? Over the V-Days, all those international freshmen from the previous year. And he's going to compete for time. And with UCLA, Mick Cronin said this flat out. He doesn't think Devin Williams can play the 5 this year, right? He's not strong enough. And I'm already seeing you in the comments talk about, you listeners, viewers, right? Is the Daimara even strong enough, athletic enough? So Devin Williams, who is more athletic than a Daimara, still a few inches shorter, maybe doesn't have the skill, but has a little more intangibles athletically. Mara has more of the skill involved with the game. If he doesn't think Williams is ready, what does that speak about the need for a Daimara? Of course, 7'3", you stand out a little bit more on the courts. Can, with the wingspan, block a shot 2 or more than Williams. But it's interesting that Mick Cronin points that out as a potential weakness for this team. This year, UCLA, it's been talked about again and again. They got 6 transfers, right? 5 already there, waiting for Dominic Harris to finish up stuff at LMU to make it official. They've got the 2 freshmen with Freeney and Trent Perry being the latest of those gets. You keep Stefanovic, you keep both Brandon and Devin Williams with Mata, Dylan Andrews, Then you've got Sebastian Mack, and there's your team, right? With a lot of somewhat continuity, a lot of guys who started a bunch of games, played some minutes together, and then you've got a significant amount of talent with the Bilodeaus, the Dailies, you've got the Kyles, a team that frankly could not finish at the rim last year, and I believe UCLA is one of the worst teams in the country if you look at big-time analytics. I've talked about this before. I forget the numbers off the top of my head. The UCLA was terrible at layups. And I talked about it, most of us could see how bad of a shooting team they were. Well, they didn't have that elite rim, above-the-rim finisher they could go to, like a Dembona, because that just wasn't part of his game prior to him being selected by the Sixers in the NBA draft. And Bona, I think, was NBA ready, but not NBA good. And not that that means anything, but he was NBA ready. He could go play, make some money, play for a while. But good means he could have been like a Hawkes, a steal of the draft, a bit of first rounder, and immediately dominated. All right. That's not where Bona's game was yet, because he only played 2 years at UCLA and had to rehab with a shoulder labrum injury. Now you look at this year, you're replacing Bona. You're bringing in Kyle, who has the defensive intangibles, a strong above the rim finishing ability. Bilodeau, who Mick Cronin alluded to in his conversation with John Rothstein about how it could be a small ball 5. I'm convinced Eric Daly Jr., I'm very convinced that Daly Jr., who came from Oklahoma State, played a small ball 5 out the bench, is going to do so for Cronin this year. And if UCLA is going to press, then I'm not sure that the 5 is much of a weakness as it needs to be and as Cronin makes it seem. But if UCLA doesn't press as much as Cronin is making it seem in this early interview season, right? I know Ben Bolch put it out there from the LA Times. Cronin's come out and said it a couple of times, I believe. UCLA, and he's even a successor. You look at the Bob Huggins, what he did at Press Virginia, right? And I keep mentioning Bob Huggins because that's who Cronin coached under his early career, right? He saw Bob Huggins transition into a pressing defense, and he likes to press. How did Cronin win at Cincinnati? He wasn't getting these athletes at Cincinnati, the UCLA type, the 5 stars. He was getting grinded out, work hard, Big East games where he was able to out hustle and defend teams. And I think Kyle on the defensive side, while being a little shorter than most big men in the Big Ten, UCLA has the size to compete. They're just not strong enough, ready enough, mature enough at this stage to compete with any team who throws out a 7-footer or 6'10" guy that has some skill, right? I'm not sure. I haven't fully dove in, right? But if Oregon still had N'Faly Dante, if say there's a Hunter Dickinson, remember he started in the Big Ten. That's just not where he is now at Kansas, sticking for that 5th year. But a guy like that or a Dante, a big man like that who can dominate, I think that's Mick Cronin's worst nightmare for this team. Now, with the scoring, the elite guard defense, it's going to take a lot to get the ball to the post, and UCLA struggled last year to get to the ball to the post. Now there's depth in the backcourt. Cronin had already said they can play 1 to 4, 10 guys, 8 to 9 guys who can play from point guard to power forward. All right? So they can get the ball to the post. They can work it to your weak side matchups. They can shoot it just about anybody on the court other than if Martyrs on the floor, although he might throw up 1-3 once in a blue moon, right? Kyle won't, but you've got almost any guy you throw on the court who can shoot a 3. So as much as the weakness is potentially 1, the 5, 2, the chemistry of this team, because you got a lot of guys who are coming in, and Mick Cronin, he will tell you the hard truth to your face, right? He will tell you to your face you're garbage and you need to get better. And he won't mince words. He will say that to the media. He will say that loudly in the locker room for all to hear. He will tell you that to you in practice, because that is just the way, the mannerisms the man has as head coach. In order to get you better, he's going to give you tough love. So between the need and development at center, although I'm fairly confident William Kyle can do a great job, defensive player, defensive stalwart at South Dakota State, a team that made the NCAA tournament. You got Bilodeau who can slot in. I know some of you guys have commented Bilodeau can be the 5. I always want to throw in Daly. I think Daly will be a 5, but Cronin loves the fact that Daly can guard, so you're going to mix and match guys who might be the 4 and the 5 up and down the floor offensively and defensively, depending on the matchups. And it's going to come down to chemistry, right? If you're going to need a flip-flop positions, you're playing press again and again, the weakness might be the chemistry over who's going to know where to go at what spot, who is going to get the ball in crunch time. A lot of those times, the ball will go into Dylan Andrews' hands and most likely won't leave it. Who's going to be the bulk scoring option? Are these guys all going to average 9 because they can all get buckets and everybody's going to make it? Or will there be 2 to 3 standout scorers and the rest just being extra options who would be leading scorers on other teams like they were coming into UCLA? All right? That is the 1-2 combo. The need for an interior post where UCLA just hasn't had that developed at this moment until Adai shows us what he's learned when playing for the U20 Spanish team internationally. Not for the Olympic team, but over in the U20s, because he's still got to earn his spot to play in the Olympics. He's just not there yet. And then Devin Williams isn't mature enough, according to Mick Cronin, physically yet, although so many times prior to Devin Williams even coming to UCLA, he said this is a 4-year guy, 3 to 4 year guy before we see some real minutes in production from him. He might not even redshirt. So that takes away the depth and size overall for that. So that leaves you a lot of undersized options at the 5. That is the potential weakness in a strong physical Big Ten. And the way for UCLA to counteract that is, 1, going at the press. Doesn't matter if you are going small, if you're out hustling teams, turning them over, not allowing passes to get cleanly into the interior and getting inside the paint for easy buckets. If you're making that a tough time for your opposition, then that's how UCLA can counteract it. But Mick Cronin's already said he's a little worried about the 5. 1 through 4, solid. That wasn't the case last year, so they're much better. And I'm still not worrying as much about the post as much as Cronin might be, but he obviously knows his team, knows what he has. And if UCLA can light it up from 3, like they should be able to this year, it might not all matter because they can all rebound, they can all defend. If they can live with just giving up a couple of points in the paint, live with the athleticism and rebounding and a couple strong defensive plays from Kyle, I'm not sure the weakness will be as bad as Cronin thinks, but it is something to look out for in the early stages for a UCLA team that's got some tough West Coast non-conference matchups, which we talk about next on Locked On UCLA. All right, I can't wait. Whether it's November for college basketball season, whether it's late August for college football, the sports, they're not sporting like we want them to because we're at the end of July at the current dropping of this pod. And most importantly, while the Olympics are here, they're not going to be here forever. We're going to wait another 4 years for the summer, another 2 years for the winter. They're not going to be sporting like we want them to. It's all training camp news. That is why we need to head over. You got to go over to FanDuel for the boost or bonus that they're offering all customers daily. FanDuel is the place to be, and there's something for everyone every day all summer long. FanDuel.com and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, cruising on here into the second segment of Locked On UCLA. Some interesting thoughts, all right? So it's all been confirmed the Bruins are going to play Arizona. It's been officially out there that the Bruins have a quote-unquote home-and-home against Gonzaga. I've discussed what UCLA needs to do in their scheduling. I'd love for another big-name opponent to be on the schedule. It mostly has to be on the West Coast. UCLA needs to have X amount of home games to make their money. They need to play a lot of games, keep their fans happy, because there's going to be a lot of road games that we as fans aren't going to be able to travel to in conference play. Not that that would ever sell out or affect the crowd in Tucson at McHale Center, or that would affect games, at Cal or Stanford with those poorly attended games. Now there's going to be rowdy crowds, 10,000 on a random night, 8,000 in a sellout arena on a given night when UCLA comes. Still, the scheduling is an important factor. Last year, you had your CBS Sports Classic. You had your tough road games, or you had a home game against Maryland in late December. You had the ugly loss against CSUN. You had the Maui Jim Maui Invitational, albeit in Honolulu rather than the Maui Gym, the Lahaina Civic Center, after the Fires switched everything around. This year, this is what UCLA has to offer. Arizona, Gonzaga, and what John Rothstein, when he was talking to Mick Cronin, I'm not sure I've really seen this, unless I just missed it. UCLA apparently has a date with New Mexico. That's a scrappy game. Now, if you go down to the pit, if you're going down to play the Lobos in New Mexico, that would be a fun road game to test your team early because they can bring and pack a lot of fans in that arena, right? Whether you're playing New Mexico, and New Mexico State for a long time was a Big West team. They've bounced around. They've had different conference affiliations. They've had their off the field, off the court turmoil in their athletic department. They had times, but right now, New Mexico, the Lobos are a team that UCLA would have a lot of fun playing, where it's a good Mountain West program. Almost all the Mountain West teams have been good, whether you're going in recent years to Colorado State, whether they want to go to Boise, wherever you want to play. If it's Gonzaga or St. Mary's in the WCC, or anybody in the Mountain West on the road, would be top-tier teams. Now, I'm not sure if UCLA is on the road or home in that game. I still think a marquee home matchup against the Mountain West is pretty good, and I think your team grows so much more if you played on the road if they go to New Mexico. Haven't seen which one it was, but that is the scheduling we're going to see going forward. UCLA, probably going to play Gonzaga 5 out of every 6 years. Same thing for Arizona. Just like what UCLA has done in football, when they axed the Georgia games, they got rid of the Auburn games. The difference in basketball, you play so many more games, UCLA will go, and they have the contractual obligations at the moment to play their CBS Sports Classic games against, prior to Big Ten membership, Ohio State, North Carolina, and Kentucky. So you get eyeballs with some brand name schools. You still play your West Coast schools. You're not going to see UCLA go play home and home with Kansas or Duke. As much as I want it, maybe we'll get a Big Ten something showdown, right? They always have those classics, Big East versus this, ACC versus that. We didn't see that a lot with the Pac-12 as much. We got Arizona State going to Southern and losing or something funky like that, right? We had those weird losses where the Pac-12 teams would go lose to the mid-major schools and the HBCU schools early in the last couple of seasons where it just wasn't good. Or UC Riverside, miracle half-court buzzer beater against Arizona State. Now you might see different showcases and mix and match matchups for UCLA in the Big Ten, all those games that are going to be worked on by the TV companies to see the best hype, most viewing, most ratings, and the most well-attended games. I do think UCLA, they should add more Mountain West teams, right? Even though Fresno's close, probably not going to drive big eyeballs. But UCLA, they got to get San Diego State on the schedule. Come on. I think the next couple of years, it's going to be a mixture of Gonzaga, Arizona, easy 1-2 couple of games. You're going to have your 3 to 4, 5 cupcake games. And then it's going to be a rotation, I think, of Mountain West teams. Not sure it'll be a full home and home. That's not I don't really have that intel in the athletic department, the scheduling department. But I do think it's going to be a rotation of Gonzaga, Arizona. You mix in a Cal and a Stanford once in a blue moon for nostalgia. And then you're going to throw in a Mountain West team. And then you have your mid-major cupcakes where you play them at home. You're going to get your Long Beaches. You're going to get your Big West teams. They're going to bring somebody from out east to come out west. They're going to do that, right? The LIUs, all those different things for UCLA to get you a couple of wins, because Big Ten play is going to be brutal. It is as good as I think UCLA still will be, regardless of what their weakness might be in the post this year. And even though that isn't even a true glaring error, I think it might be overlooked, or it can be balanced out by more shooting, more scoring, athletic players, up-tempo play that UCLA just hasn't had under Mick Cronin. All things I think UCLA can negate the weakness that they might have coming in this year. Still going to wear them out when you go play game in and game out in the Big Ten schedule. Year in and year out, they're going to start adding the Stanfords and the Cals. And soon enough, there might be a road trip to Oregon State or Washington State. And last year, Washington State was a tournament team, a very good tournament team. And Oregon State, fairly recently, a Cinderella run to the Elite Eight under Coach Tinkle, right? So this is, I think, going to be a rotation. Now, depending on what conference Washington State and Oregon State end up in, whether it's WCC, Mountain West, Independent, Pac-12 rebuilt, I don't know how that's going to play out. At the moment, this is my mind, especially being a UCLA fan, talking Locked On UCLA. Pac-12's dead until further notice. It's not really the same if you don't have UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington. If you don't have those kind of legacy schools, it's not the same Pac-10, Pac-12, Pac-8, whatever it will be in the future. As much as we'll get excited, it just won't be the same. But they will have one of those teams on the schedule in the future. That's not confirmed. That's not. It's just going to happen. West Coast games will happen. Mick Cronin even alluded to it. They need to have as many home games as possible because of the ticket revenue. They need to have. They're going to travel less. They don't want to travel 26 time zones like the football team is going to do this year. Hawaii to then LSU to Penn State to Nebraska. That's what they're going to do this year for football. Basketball, they're going to front load a lot of their games on the West Coast, right? What was the joke? I think it was Florida or Florida State, where the joke was it had been like 50 billion years since one of those two schools had actually left the state for a non-conference game, right? They don't leave. They just stay there. They might go to Gainesville. They might go to Jacksonville. They'll play, right? They're not going to leave the state. That is what UCLA's mindset, Mick Cronin's mindset needs to be. Now, it's a little easier because UCLA can hop on a plane and go to Vegas, get a game out. They can go play, a team in Denver if they really wanted to, get some altitude challenges. They can go play a game in an NBA arena in Sacramento. They can go to the Intuit Dome where they're playing Gonzaga. They can go up the coast to go play Gonzaga in Seattle like they're going to do in a couple of years in the Climate Pledge Arena. They don't have to go far, but I think Mick Cronin is going to and must have – you have a map. You have a map. You get a map of the United States. You draw a line no further than Las Vegas. And other than contractual obligations where you got to go play a classic game or this or that, a holiday tournament where you go fly and you travel a little bit, you make a stand and you say, we're not going this far east until Big Ten play starts. And it's going to be a ridiculous place. Like, we're not going to go further east than Tucson. We're not going to go further east than Vegas, where we might play Arizona in a non-conference game that feels like a road game. We're not going to go further east than one of those two places, and then we're going to go travel everything for Big Ten play. I think that's the hard line they're going to have to draw, or are already preparing for the next 5-10 years until there's crazier conference affiliation switches again, realignment, whatever you have, right? They're just going to keep it on the West Coast. And the big news is New Mexico looks like it's on the schedule, I believe what John Rothstein said. Then you've got Arizona, Gonzaga. Those are some fun games. Now, I can't wait to see what the mid-majors bring in. The other games, they already got North Carolina on the schedule. That's a lot of big-name teams UCLA's playing in addition to the Big Ten schedule. All right? This is a successful UCLA team, in my mind, preparing to have good success, and they still might lose 7 to 8 games. Easy. Tough schedule. But I still believe in this team and their success. 7 to 8 games. Haven't even seen the schedule yet. That is my kind of preliminary, haven't seen the schedule. 7 to 8 losses would be a very good season, and they could still contend and go for a title, right? This isn't like a 33-2 year. This is a team that might lose quite a bit of games and still compete. All right? And speaking of competing, we're going to talk about UCLA football camp starting and preparing for Big Ten play as we prepare to wrap up this podcast on Locked On UCLA today. Let's talk about Ibotta, because whether you're looking for sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids as the summer months come to a winding close, all those things have in common is the big thing is you're spending your time, whether it's during the summer, heading to the fall. Use Ibotta and you can get cash back in all your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. And Ibotta, most importantly, free app, lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items, from groceries to supplies, beauty supplies, toys. Just make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Ibotta is offering you, the listeners, $5 just to try the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Again, use the code LOCKEDONCollege in the App Store or Google Play Store for the Ibotta app. That's IBOTTA, Ibotta, in the App Store or Google Play Store with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Well, those warmer, sunnier days are here because you can fuel up for these warm, sunny days here in the summer with Factor meals, no prep, no mess meals. You can meet your wellness goals in time for the end of summer. Get that beach bod thanks to the menu of a chef-crafted meal with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and they're ready to eat in 2 minutes. I never have time to eat. So anything that is dietitian approved and ready to eat and good in 2 minutes, man, no matter how busy you are or I am, I'm always going to enjoy this nutrition, great tasting meal. Over 35 different meals, 60 add-ons to choose from every week. You'll always have new flavors to explore. Enjoy effortless support for your style. 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. Go to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Use the code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next month. Again, that's LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 for $50 off your first box and 20% off your second while your subscription is active. All right, we're getting to the days. It's the end of July. And we're, at the moment of the dropping of this podcast, 1 month away from where UCLA is going to play Hawaii on the road, week 0, get a week off, then go play Indiana. Next thing you know, they go to LSU, and we're deep into September. A lot of big games. We'll learn a lot about this team. But right now, they're heading into camp. QB1, that's already settled. It's Ethan Garbers. It's easy. You've got a returning quarterback. He has been lit up by many hits in previous years. He has been having to sit behind Dorian Thompson-Robinson, sit behind, and take back his job when he was battling Dante Moore in camp. He's seen coaching switches, offensive coordinating switches. He is a guy that's primed and ready to lead the team, having been one of the 3 players selected to go to Big Ten Media Days. So this is a team that is prepared with its quarterback. And heck, they've got 2 running backs returning who have been there a few years. TJ Harden looked great against USC, looked great in many options. And then you've got Keegan Jones, who is a versatile option and probably, hopefully, should be returning kicks in this next year, special teams wise, whatever the Bruins want to do to improve their special teams coordinating. It was bad last year. It was forgotten about. Whether it's kicking, punting, anything, UCLA needs to emphasize an added, return game. Something. They got to do something special with the return game because it was non-existent after a few years of dynamic returning that the Bruins had. Last couple of years, they did. Last year, specifically in 23, UCLA did not have it. Now it's up to hopefully maybe Keegan Jones, whatever it might be, UCLA get an addition to some special teams and make sure the kicking game's good. I think they got it good in the portal, stealing a former Cal kicker, getting punters, long snappers, replacing those long snappers, replacing the guy who replaced the transfer long snapper. Now you've got a team that's ready. So one, your QB1 is set. You've got running backs. You've got talented skill guys. The offense is set as long as you can protect your quarterback and run. And under a Chip Kelly-headed offense, you ran the ball. Now, if the enemy can get any sort of protection for Garbers, you might see a very big year for Ethan Garbers this year. And most importantly, they're still going to run the rock. Maybe not over 53, 55%. I was looking up numbers for what Chip Kelly did in recent years. He's going to run the rock at Ohio State just like he did at UCLA over 50% of the time. The offense succeeded when they would run more rushing plays than passing plays. Now I think that might differ. UCLA has the receivers to succeed, the pass-catching receivers to succeed, and they've got the pass-catching receivers, running backs to succeed, right? And they have the running backs to succeed in order to move forward and push the ball, right? Just pound the ground and move the football 2 to 3, 4 yards, cloud of dust, and get first downs if they need to. It's all going to come down offensively to the O-line, just like it did last year in 23 when UCLA just did not have the depth and the skill and the consistently week in and week out to protect the quarterback and move the ball against teams when it was like 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. They just couldn't do it. They had to punch in the end zone, short, no, couldn't do it. That is the big thing. Special teams, UCLA needs to get better on special teams. The reason why UCLA had to go for it so many times last year when they played Arizona State, when they didn't want to do it against Utah, they were afraid, one, because they couldn't kick the ball. They even had transfer kickers. They even had guys trying to earn jobs and trying to kick everything. UCLA must be much better at kicking and returning, specifically scoring points with field goals, because the Bruins were atrocious last year. They used multiple kickers. It did not work. Not sure if it was a mind game, not sure whatever it might be. It did not work. And the return game, kick returning, punt returning, they need to get something out of that. Because if they can get positive yardage and be one of the better special teams, all right, it's 3 facets of the game. If you can dominate special teams, that is how you steal wins on the road when you're playing Big Ten teams with stout defenses. If the offensive line's off the snuff, that is how you steal it. If you just get into field goal range, imagine how many more points UCLA could have scored in recent years, especially in 23 when they had numerous opportunities within field goal range to kick it and score. Right now, not every college team has a consistent, solid kicker. We've noticed that regardless of the team or the program, whatever it's on the line. But if UCLA has some consistency in the kicking game, the Bruins will be ready to play. And then the biggest question mark probably will all look towards the defense. All right. Who's going to stand out? Interior defensive line, UCLA has what it needs. They brought Tawia back. The edge rushing is a problem. Not a problem, but it's a source of concern. When you lose Latu, you lose the Murphy twins, you lose a lot of energy, skill, and speed. Where is UCLA going to come from after changing coordinators for the 3rd, 4th year in a row? You lose your most talented players. You do have Medrano, you do have Oladipo. Medrano was a standout in 23. Oladipo was amazing at Cal against UCLA, came to UCLA. Would love to see it in a more expanded role for him continuing to grow. And then the DBs, some sneaky experience just not playing together from all over the country. And you got guys who've played at 2, 3, 4 stops, guys who have played 7 years like Brian Addison, taking over for some young talent that transferred over to USC, but you've got guys who have been back there for a long time with a new defensive coordinator, but guys who have coached the safeties and the DBs, right? The Norwoods and the Whitfields of the world who have been at UCLA a couple years. So it's stable when it comes to position coaches, even though Kaika Malloy has switched a little bit. The defensive coaching room, other than Ken Norton Jr. leaving, is stable. It's just, what's the schemes? Where's the talent going to come from? And where can you hide your lack of a pass rush? All right. The UCLA does not have a top tier defense like they did in 23. That was dominant, could stop the run, would force fumbles, recovered a lot of fumbles, got a couple of picks. The DBs could make plays. It's going to be up to Devin Kirkwood and Jalen Davies to step up their game, a youngster in Davies. You've got Kirkwood, who's been there a while. It's going to be up to the secondary to be ball hawks, the team that had an emphasis on knock the ball out. The defense is where we're wondering, can UCLA hang in the Big Ten? All right. If they can protect their quarterback and the defense can hang, we'll find out if this team is bowling and competitive this year. And in shows to come, I'm going to talk to you about, one, what does it look like for UCLA to have a successful season in 24? It's camp time. It's time to dive in. Once again, look at those win-loss numbers and tell you, what does it mean to have a successful campaign in 2024 in the inaugural Big Ten year? All right. So come here, come to Locked On UCLA, like, comment, subscribe, download. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comment section. We'll tell you all about it here on this show. In the meantime, get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.